Welcome to The Explainer. We are about to break down a massive shift that's happening in the software world. You see, for years, the absolute mantra was buy, don't build. Well, that era is over. We're going to explore why. For the first time in a very long time, building your own software might just be the smartest financial move your company can make.
So let's just dive right in with a question. Have you looked at your company's software bill lately? I mean, really looked at it? There's a pretty good chance there's one line item that just keeps creeping up and up and up with no ceiling in sight. Yep, that's your subscription bill, and that's exactly what we're talking about today.
You know, for the longest time, renting software through a SaaS subscription felt like a fantastic deal. The costs were predictable, you didn't have to worry about maintenance, it was great. But that unspoken agreement has completely broken down. Now companies are finding themselves trapped with vendors holding all the cards.
And this chart, it just lays it all out crystal clear. While general inflation is chugging along at, say, 2.7%, SaaS prices are skyrocketing by an average of 12.2% a year. That is nearly 5 times higher. Vendors have shifted their focus from getting new customers to squeezing more revenue out of the ones they already have. On top of those price hikes, there's just so much hidden waste. Our data shows that, on average, a full 21% of all SaaS licenses are what we call shelfware. That means they're paid for every single month, but they are never, ever used. It's literally like renting an entire floor of an office building and just leaving it empty.
And that whole idea of a predictable monthly bill, yeah, that's pretty much a myth. When you start tacking on all the hidden fees for things like API access, data storage, and essential integrations, your final bill can be 30 to 50% higher than the sticker price. The predictability you thought you were paying for just isn't there.
Okay, so that's one side of the story, the exploding cost of renting. But while that's been happening, something else has been quietly changing the game on the other side of the equation. And that something is, you guessed it, artificial intelligence. And the change here is, well, it's absolutely massive. Thanks to new AI tools, the cost to build a minimum viable product, a basic first version of a new piece of software, has collapsed. What would have easily cost $150,000 just a couple of years ago can now be done for around $30,000. That is an 80% drop.
This has created what we're calling the economic crossing point. For the last 2 decades, the math was simple. Building your own software was way too expensive compared to just buying a subscription. AI has completely flipped that script. We've crossed a historic threshold where, for many businesses, it's actually cheaper to build than to buy. So how is this even possible? Well, it's because of a new development style called vibe coding. Instead of typing out every single line of code, developers now describe what they want in natural language, and an AI assistant does the heavy lifting. The developer's role is shifting from a typist to more of a high-level architect and a quality control reviewer. It changes everything. But, and this is a huge but, there's a catch. This newfound power to spin up software almost instantly is incredibly seductive, but it comes with some serious risks if you're not careful. At its core, vibe coding is exactly what it sounds like. You just describe the vibe of what you want. Create a user sign-up page with fields for a name and an email. And the generative AI translates that intent directly into code. It's an unbelievable accelerator. And here's the paradox in a nutshell. On one hand, you get this massive, almost unbelievable boost in productivity right out of the gate. But on the other hand, if you're not careful, you can rack up an equally massive amount of technical debt that will come back to haunt you later. See, without proper human oversight, you end up with comprehension debt, code that technically works, but that nobody on your team actually understands. This leads to these brittle, Frankenstein's monster code bases, potential security holes, and eventually you hit what we call the maintenance cliff, where updating the software becomes nearly impossible.
This quote just nails it. Vibe coding is an absolutely fantastic tool for getting a project off the ground on day one. But if that AI-generated code isn't properly structured and reviewed by an expert, it becomes a catastrophic liability by day 100. So how do you manage all this? How do you get the upside without the catastrophic downside? Well, it requires a pretty big shift in how you think about your technology and your finances. It's about rethinking what exactly you're paying for. Think about it like this. When you buy a SaaS subscription, that's an operating expense, an OpEx. You're renting. The money you spend is gone, and it doesn't build any long-term value.
But when you build your own software, it's a capital expenditure, a CapEx. You're creating a tangible asset that actually increases the value of your company.
And when you look at the real-world numbers, it's staggering. For a typical mid-sized company, renting an enterprise tool could cost you about $2.4 million over 5 years. And at the end of that, you have exactly zero to show for it. Building a custom tool with AI, on the other hand, costs way less over that same period, and you own valuable intellectual property at the end. Let's just let that sink in for a second. The net savings are incredible. In this one example, that's a $1.8 million difference over 5 years. And that's before you even count the value of the asset you've built. But honestly, the savings are just the beginning. This isn't just about cutting costs. It's about building a real, sustainable competitive advantage that your rivals, who are all using the same off-the-shelf tools, simply can't match. When you build, you can literally encode your company's secret sauce, your unique workflows and processes, right into your software. You're not forcing your team to adapt to some generic tool. You also maintain total control over your own data, and you can integrate with your other systems seamlessly without paying extra fees for the privilege. Now, the key to doing this safely is having a disciplined framework. We call this the traffic light protocol. It sets clear rules. The green zone is for low-risk stuff like creating documentation, where you can let the AI run free. The yellow zone is for things like business logic, where AI assists a human who is actively reviewing and guiding the work. And then you have the red zone. This is for critical areas like security and core architecture, where human expertise is absolutely non-negotiable. So this is the question you have to ask yourself. In this new AI-driven economy, are you just renting a growing list of liabilities that drain your budget? Or are you investing in building valuable strategic assets that will power your business for years to come? The answer to that question could very well define the future of your company.